In this episode of the World Nomads Podcast, we explore Georgia, the country, not the state.
Welcome to the World Nomads Podcast, delivered by World Nomads, the travel lifestyle and insurance brand. It's not your usual travel podcast. It's everything for the adventurous, independent traveler.
Hi, Kim and Phil with you for 2020. And kickstarting the year, we're exploring, as Phil said, Georgia, the country, not the US state. There must be some confusion at times.
Yeah, I do sing the song every time I talk about Georgia, the country.
What's the song?
Well, it's on my mind.
Oh, yeah, of course. Okay. I didn't pick up on it. So
there is no way I'm going to sing.
Damn. Why would a nomad want to travel to Georgia, the country?
Well, look, it's got a really rich but difficult history. In fact, it's been invaded from all directions a number of times. But similar to Poland, a destination we explored last year, Georgia's emerging from that dark past as a go-to destination. So politics aside, a nomad would want to go there for the food and the wine. It's apparently the birthplace of wine, which you'll hear about in this episode. There are plenty of mountains to hike, forests and caves to explore, all set among a stunning countryside.
We will touch on pretty much all of that in this episode with our guests, the first of which is Ralph Valesco. We first chatted to him in our episode on Morocco. He runs Photo Enrichment Adventures. He's got a new brand, A La Campagna Experiences. A La Campagna Experiences.
I was just going to say, what's it called again, Kim?
Well, okay. Nothing's changed for 2020.
No.
At the time of recording, he was in Tbilisi, and don't laugh at my pronunciations, and had also just run a Georgia-Armenia trip. So this destination is really on the radar, Ralph.
I don't think it's on everyone's radar, but I think it's becoming somewhat popular, and there's a really nice tourist infrastructure that's developed, and really nice hotels and restaurants and flights, and the roads are getting better. So I think that's always something that certainly helps with more of the mass tourism, for sure.
Give me a bit of a flavour of the place. Is it sort of Eastern European, or is it more Asian, or what is the flavour of it?
Well, that's interesting. It's a great question, because it's right on sort of that crux of Europe or Asia, and I feel it's got a very European feel to it, especially the capital city of Tbilisi, which is just wonderful. It's very old. I believe it's from the 500s, but it also has extremely modern architecture, bridges, buildings. But also the Airbnb that I'm staying in right now overlooks the just gorgeous Karakali Fortress, and it's and everything's beautifully lit up at night. I go to Cuba quite a bit, and there's beautiful buildings there, but they just don't have the funds to light them up all the time. And so it's just beautiful how they light up the buildings here. And for photography, which I'm a photographer, it can really make for some beautiful shots. But it's definitely got a more European feel to me. But then there is that sort of old world Central Asian part as well.
So when you say it's set up for tourism and for travellers, from the West, we're kind of only just discovering it now, but it must be a popular destination for some other parts. Is it like a Russian holiday destination?
Absolutely. The Russians obviously been coming here for a long, long time, and they are the main tourists. But it's very easy to get to because there's no visa required by most nationalities. So as a U.S. citizen, there's no visa required whatsoever. And from my last research that I did, a U.S. citizen can stay here for up to 365 days before needing to leave or to get any kind of visa.
Phil's trying to get a sense of the flavour, but what is it known for as a destination? Is it somewhere that you would go if you wanted to go hiking? Is it somewhere that you would go if you wanted a taste of history?
Yes and yes. The mountains here are absolutely stunning. Now, I've been coming here for about a year and a half now, and the first time I came last year to do scouting for a trip that I have put together to both Armenia and Georgia, I did not get up to the north to an area called Kazbegi, which is right on the Russian border. But I did get a chance to get up there on this trip, and it is stunningly beautiful. lots of hiking trails, and a lot of people go there for outdoor activities. There's like parapenting, ski resorts. It's absolutely stunningly beautiful, sort of like, compare it somewhat to the parts of the Swiss Alps, snow-capped, really rugged mountains. And then you've, in Stepantsminda, which is in the Kazbegi region, sort of the main town there, the one hotel that we stayed at is called Rooms Hotel. And the views out onto that mountain range are just spectacular. And then you've got these snow-capped mountains, and then there's this tiny little monastery just sitting right on one of the peaks.
All right, let's get into a couple other nitty-gritties as well. Food and drink.
Oh, yes and yes again. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that, I've owned restaurants. I'm a third-generation restaurateur. I don't do that anymore, but I don't consider myself a foodie, but I love food. I do eat 3 times a day. And the food here is just fresh. It's tasty. I mean, I don't know about in Australia where you are, but for me in the U.S., we've got a lot of agriculture, but it seems like the majority of our food comes from halfway around the world. It's picked before it's even mature. And by the time it gets to the U.S., then it's, beautiful red ripe tomatoes, but they taste like plastic. And so here the food is just fresh and organic, and plenty of it. Oh, I can't say enough about the food, that's for sure. And then as far as the drink goes, Georgia's considered to be the birthplace of wine and has been producing wine for more than 8,000 years. And UNESCO's even listed the clay jar called the kvevri that the traditional Georgian wine is made in. It's held underground to keep the temperature consistent. But UNESCO's listed it on its Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity list.
You say you're in an Airbnb and you've been there for a couple of months. I'm interested in the experience of living in Tbilisi and interacting with the Georgians. How are you finding that?
Yeah, they're very friendly people. The Airbnb that I have right now is in a neighborhood, just a locals neighborhood, no other tourists whatsoever. But like I said, it does have a gorgeous view of the Karikala fortress. I'm not sure I'm saying that correctly, actually.
Don't ask us.
Yeah, right. But it's in a neighborhood. So I feel like, I'm going to the local grocery store. There's not one other tourist in sight. And so I love to do that when I travel, but there are really nice and upcoming neighborhoods that are just gorgeous architecture, but the cost of living is extremely inexpensive as well. So if someone's looking for a very affordable destination, Georgia and Tbilisi are absolutely that.
Thanks for that, Ralph. Now, that was really, Phil, a great snapshot of an up-and-coming destination. Affordable,
yes,
with stunning vistas, great hiking,
yes,
beautiful architecture, and great food and wine. So
yep,
let's start picking this destination apart. Tim Neville, as we know, is a journalist and the World Nomads Writing Scholarship Mentor. If we mentioned everything Tim Neville was, it would be the podcast. So we'll have all the links in show notes. But he's recently been to Georgia. And Tim, is Ralph's snapshot on the money there?
I would say he is absolutely right. The country is just such a treat to travel through and to visit and just hang out in. It's funny. I've only been there once, but I was there with some people who had been there before, and every time they leave thinking, why am I leaving? And so they tend to come back. One of the people on our trip has been there 17 times.
Yeah.
So it's definitely that kind of place.
Well, as we're sort of, doing our research for this episode, I'm, having a look at a few videos on YouTube and what have you. It's absolutely stunning.
It's like walking out of a fable. I don't know if I've ever used that for another place, but it's just the contrast between these just enormous mountains and then these ancient stone towers, and then their traditions, and it's just everything about it is just so exotic on so many levels and incredibly friendly. I really just can't say enough.
Well, Ralph said that it's incredibly friendly, and Phil was kind of talking about, okay, we're only hearing about it now as an up-and-coming destination, but there's this tourist infrastructure that exists. Who's travelling there? He said the Russians. Since that chat, there has now been some issues with the Russians.
There's definitely an uneasy relationship there, and it's really too bad. But the Georgians have been dealing with invaders for a long, long time, and that doesn't make it any easier, of course. But they're definitely people that know how to persevere. And it's still just an absolutely amazing place to go visit.
Now, you were there last year with the film crew, Green Living Projects, GLP Films. What were you doing? We saw you in a film trailer with a World Nomads buff on, actually.
Yeah, when you went paragliding.
That is, wow, good eye. Yeah, that is absolutely true. Yeah, so GLP, I've known those guys for a while, and they came up, they approached me and said, hey, we've got a project in Georgia and are looking for a writer to come along. Would you be interested? And I was on a hike, and I stopped hiking immediately. I was like, I'm sorry, what? Yes. Of course. Yes. It's one of those places that's been on my dream destination list for a long time. And so those guys, they're really interesting. They go into a country or into a region, and they sort of already have a story idea. They know who to talk to, or they've lined up some interviews. And so I basically just tagged along with them, and then kind of, got to hang out a little bit on my own. But yeah, so we did everything from eat. Oh my gosh, you can't go to Georgia and not eat. Just you eat all the time, and then you leave and you're wishing that you were back in Georgia still eating. So we did a lot of that. I went paragliding, as you saw, which was just unbelievable. I've never done something quite like that. Like, I've gone paragliding before, but I don't know. It's just there's just something super, super cool about flying into, an ancient village with these 8th century stone towers popping up underneath your feet as you're drifting in, and these massive snow-capped mountains back behind you. So we did a lot of outdoor stuff. And then one of the things that I'm actually writing about for you guys is the singing. Now, I didn't sing, and I definitely will not sing for you now, but it is just, the Georgian singing tradition is not to be missed. In fact, I just found there's actually a Spotify playlist.
Oh, really? Okay.
Georgian singing, yeah. It's called The Sound of Georgian Polyphony.
Okay.
As you say it.
And what is that then?
A lot of Eastern countries have this singing tradition, obviously. But, you go to Poland, let's say, and they'll break out into song, and it'll be, oh, there was a lovely girl, and how much I love this lovely girl, and she was on the far side of the river, kind of like happy, party songs. Georgian songs have a much different tone to them. A lot of them, some of these songs are literally 1,000 years old now. And typically they have three, at least, typically they're the men who sing them a cappella style, and they'll have 3 different vocal ranges going on. And so the cumulative effect of all of this is, even if you don't speak a lick of Georgian, which I don't, you can be sitting, let's say, in a bar, just like your regular bar, and all of a sudden a table next to you will just break out in this very moving, like, bone-chilling song with all these different vocal ranges going on, and the bar will just shut up and everybody will listen, and then it's done, everybody claps, and then they go back about their business until the next table breaks out and starts singing. So it's it is really, like, I'm getting chills here just thinking about it right now, because it's just so moving. Something that's really interesting that I found out about their singing is, one, it is actually, their singing is actually listed as a UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity. So it's that special. It's something that deserves its own recognition. This my friends, is the coolest thing I've heard. And that is, right now, as we speak, untold millions of miles from Earth, there is a satellite with a gold record plastered on the front of it that has, among other songs and other quote-unquote sounds of Earth, a Georgian song on it. It's track number 16. So if we get some aliens that find this thing, they're going to be exposed to this kind of music.
Is that the Voyager or whatever it was?
It's Voyager 2. It launched in 1977, and it's got a gold record, Sounds of Earth.
Now, you said the singing is listed as one of UNESCO's intangible Finnish heritage. Yeah. Ralph was saying that the wine is also listed.
That wine is definitely intangible once it's around me, that's for sure. I will admit that. Yeah. But it's cool. And what's really neat about it is the way they make it as well. Like, you can go, I'm sure he talked about this, with the holes in the ground.
Yes.
And so it's neat. We went to a vineyard in the Kakheti region of eastern Georgia, and met up with some winemakers there who are bringing back varieties that nearly went extinct under the Soviets, because Stalin, who was Georgian actually, Stalin liked one kind of wine, and so that's what the state agricultural system produced. I may be generalizing and oversimplifying that, but it's cool because you go there and you can see these winemakers are very proud of their traditions, obviously, and are bringing these delicious varietals back.
This country, who would it appeal to, do you think?
I think it'd be easier to go through who wouldn't it appeal to, and that would be anybody who does not like music, who does not like good food, who hates stunning scenery, and just cannot be bothered to get on a plane to get there. No, seriously, the place is just like Tbilisi, the capital. I knew nothing about it really, just other than it had a funny spelling. And I show up there the first night, and you're jet lagged, you're tired, and we arrived kind of late, and I was just immediately jazzed. I was like, oh my God, this place just has an energy to it. It's just a stunning city, just the way the layout is, all sorts of fun little places to go eat, to hang out, and incredibly safe. Of course, common sense will see you through, but we would stay out till 2-3 in the morning and then walk back to our hotel like no problem at all. Just it's just unbelievably great.
Fabulous. Well, thank you for your insight. And Phil, for 2020, not a bad way to start with a destination that we desperately want to go to.
I'm so desperate to get there now.
Yeah.
It is absolutely wonderful. Yeah. Good skiing in the wintertime as well. So you guys won't go wrong.
Sounds like it. Now, Tim mentioned GLP Films, who he was with in Georgia. They are an award-winning content marketing agency, but they're dedicated to travel and sustainability storytelling. They've produced over 200 films from 30 countries, including Georgia.
Yeah, in fact, they've got one called One Blood Georgia, which was awarded Best Adventure Travel Film of 2019 in the ATTA Film Contest. And Rob Holmes is here to tell us all about it.
The story around One Blood Georgia came from just our research and due diligence in the pre-production phase when we filmed there, and really identifying some unique characters, unique people that really represented Georgia, this new Georgia. And I think, in summary, what I really love about this story is it's a multi-generational story. It's about a grandmother who was skydiving back in the 50s. So again, a grandmother skydiving in the 1950s in a country under Soviet rule. She was part of this renegade a group of women who were doing something not normal in a country, in a destination like Georgia, and being that skydiving. And then, just seeing that profound impact she had on her grandson. And Alex is just a great example, a great character that really represents, in my opinion, in our opinion, the future of a destination like Georgia. He's young, he's energetic, he's outgoing, he's an entrepreneur, he's outdoorsy, he's a media person. He's really representing, I think, what we see as the exciting aspects of tourism. He works for the Ajara Group, which is one of the largest hospitality groups in Georgia. And his full-time job is being an urban guide. So he takes tourists on walking tours of the city, the capital city of Tbilisi. And so he really has that firsthand knowledge and understanding of what Georgia is all about. It's a melting pot of just rich culture, authentic culture, and heritage. And so pairing him with his grandmother, who came specifically from the Soviet era, to this young, new generation in Georgia was such a great pairing. And Alex's ancestry is Ukrainian and Russian, but he was born in Georgia. And so he's Georgian, and so it was a great. I think the connection they had for each other, the respect for each other. You see that in the story, and that's what we were trying to connect. We wanted to connect emotionally to some of the history and the heritage and the respect and admiration that two different generations had for each other, and the grandmother really pushing him to get out there, explore, and he's doing it at a very young age. And doing something really exciting like paragliding. So it was really our honor to tell their story and to give people a little bit of insight into a fascinating country and destination like Georgia.
Wow, sensational way of describing it. But can I just say there was one word in there that I think is, like the magic sauce for travel, and that was the word authentic. If you can find a destination that has authenticity, you're going to have a really amazing experience, aren't you?
Yeah, and I think that sort of is why we see the team at GLP, why we just have a lot of passion and interest in working with emerging destinations. Georgia is an emerging destination. It's exactly what you said. It's authentic. It's raw. It hasn't been heavily traveled. It's a new experience. I was just in Georgia a couple weeks ago, and it's great to go back and see the changes that are happening. But again, it's still an authentic destination that really provides a unique experience for the traveler, for any kind of traveler. Soft traveler to an adventure traveler. It has those experiences of it's not tremendously easy to get around. You have to talk to the locals, and English isn't spoken by everyone. And getting around, you have to, be creative and be patient. But I think that's what a lot of travelers want these days, is they want that unique, authentic experience that's not covered in T-shirt shops and over flooded with too many tourists. Georgia's destination that's really just coming into its own, and it's still unspoiled, and just provides that rich experience. And that for me as a traveler, I mean, that's how I got into this industry. Is when I graduated university, I traveled around the world for a year and continued to do so after that. And that's the travel that everyone wants. And so it was great to tell a story in a destination like Georgia that is new, is up and coming, and it just has that unique and authentic experience.
Hey, do you ever worry that you are creating the next surge of T-shirt shops in some place, though?
Well, yeah, I mean, but I think there's a lot of ways to combat that. And I think that's where, for us as a boutique agency, a specialized agency, it's all about the marketing. And the better job that we do in the marketing, the targeted marketing, we can reach those targeted travelers that a destination like Georgia wants. Yes, it wants to grow its tourism, but it wants to grow it right. It doesn't want to be the next Venice, the next Barcelona, which are iconic destinations, but they are struggling with over-tourism. So it really comes down to, you can have an award-winning film, but also keep in mind, we're not branding locations. We're not calling out specific names. We're talking about the destination. So trying to find, the palaces and the cathedrals and the specific mountains and communities that we filmed, it's very difficult too. We're talking about the destination. So, and then I think, like I just said, the key here to not create another destination with T-shirt shops is to do a good job in targeting that right audience. This isn't mass marketing. This is modern day targeted marketing. So the right traveler is going to be seeing the promotional content for Georgia.
That's Rob Holmes, the founder of GLP Films there. Links in show notes. Phil, dish us up some travel news, would you?
Yeah, all right. Look, new year, new start. And it's been shared around the office a lot. I love Bored Panda. Well, they recently shared 50 of the best good news stories from 2019, and I thought we'd have a look back on some of those. Like the Malawi female chief who came to power immediately annulled 1,500 child marriages, making them illegal, and then sent all the young girls back to school.
Good on her.
Yep.
Girl power.
Here's another one. 7 eggs from the world's last 2 remaining northern white rhinos have been successfully fertilised, which means they might be able to save the species.
Great news.
Here's another one. Sweden has rolled out a great initiative. Blood donors get a text message whenever their blood saves a life. Here's another one. Canada passed a bill in 2019 that made it illegal to keep whales, dolphins and porpoises in captivity for entertainment. I think we spoke about that one. We cheered that one when it happened. And I love this one. South Korea is organising daytime disco parties for people over 65 to tackle loneliness and dementia.
Gee, that's sweet, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Anything else?
No, I think that'll do for the start of the year.
Mate is an aspiring travel writer. He's a student and he's a full-time foodie. He won the World Nomads Travel Writing Scholarship in 2018. I remember that. Yep. His girlfriend is Georgian and he wrote about her going to her homeland of Abkhazia. Okay? He says it a lot nicer than I do. It's a de facto sovereign state that is internationally recognised as an autonomous republic of Georgia and under Russian control. So he fills us in on what happened in 2008 and then earlier, which saw people displaced and not allowed to return to their home, like his girlfriend.
Well, that was actually one of the few things I knew about Georgia when I initially moved there was that they had the war with Russia in 2008, that Stalin was from Georgia, and that they had a footballer who's now the mayor of Tbilisi that played for AC Milan, Kaka Kaladze. So it was one of the only 3 things that I knew about the country. And, what do I know about it? It was a pretty brutal loss for Georgia in the short few days that it lasted. It resulted in the occupation of roughly 20% of internationally recognized Georgian territory. And it's in terms of its repercussions on the international level, it was quite a taste of what was to come from Russian foreign policy that we see today.
So the story that was a winning entry in the 2018 World Nomads Travel Writing Scholarship kind of drew on that. Are you still with the girlfriend that you wrote about in that story?
Yes. Still with her and very happily in love. And yeah.
That's lovely. So her family were caught up in this, weren't they? Can you walk us through that?
Yes, so they were caught up not in the 2008 one, but the one that happened in the early 90s. So after the Soviet Union fell, there was a series of violent conflicts taking place across the former territory, and the one in Abkhazia was one of the bloodiest. If I have my figures correct, people estimate that tens of thousands of people were killed, and of course we know that as many as 250, even 300,000 people were displaced. Many of them were ethnic Georgians, and so the deal with that particular conflict was to try and sum up quite a bit of history in a few sentences. Was that it was based from ethnic tensions between the resident Georgian and Abkhaz populations in Abkhazia. So Georgians had, many of them were settled into Abkhazia during the Stalinist era, when Stalin, undertook with his right-hand man, Beria, who was also Georgian, the resettlement of populations, which included a bunch of ethnic Georgians to Abkhazia. And this this contributed to rising ethnic tensions as local populations began to perceive a Georgian conspiracy against Abkhazia. So it was really simmering from around the 30s. And then in the 90s, once there was a bubble of authority, and it was a vacuum, sorry, not a bubble, the tensions just, scaled up, and eventually it came out into violent conflict. And so my girlfriend's family, they had to flee the province once her father was killed in the fighting. And they left not long before the fall of Sukhumi, so the capital, which is known as Sukhum today in Abkhazia, because they take off the eyes, because the eyes are Georgian, associated with Georgian names. So Sukhumi is Sukhum in Abkhazia today. And so they had to flee. I believe that was in September 1993.
Well, your winning story started with my entry permit was ready and it was time to visit the home of the woman I loved. But she, for some reason, can't go back there.
Yeah, so it's difficult for Georgians to enter the territory for a lot of political reasons. There still are many ethnic Georgians living in certain parts, such as Gali. It's a little town near the so-called border, or the administrative borderline, as I believe it's known officially. So they can enter, but it's difficult. You need special permission. But in her case, it's quite difficult, if not impossible, for her to enter, because her father was involved in the Georgian military as well as her father's family. So it's a last name that would be easily recognized if she were to enter, and it's just dangerous in terms of potential retribution. But for her to try crossing, it's very interesting because for tourists, for European Union citizens, and for Americans, Australians, anyone Western, foreign, it's quite simple to enter. You will go on the Abkhaz Foreign Ministry's website to request an entry permit. You give your passport details, you tell them which point of entry you want to come from, and it's actually, if anyone does plan on going there, you definitely should enter from Georgia proper, because that's the only legal entry point as recognized by the Georgian state. So if you enter from Russia, from the side of Sochi, so southwest Russia, that's considered a violation of Georgian territorial sovereignty by the Georgian state. So you'll have a very hard time entering Georgia proper afterwards. So that's for anyone wanting to go. Make sure to enter from the Inguri side, and then you request it. You wait a few days. You give your travel details. You tell them what you're going to do. You give your employment info, where you're staying, why you're coming. And then you wait, and they normally approve it. Like, I have not had a problem being approved or rejected. And then you just go. You arrive on the Georgian side of the administrative borderline. You wait until Tbilisi, so the capital of Georgia, processes your paperwork. So the people at the crossing, the police will scan your passport, take it. They'll wait for the green light, and then you walk across a bridge which crosses the Inguri River, and then you see this big gate and big sign which says "Welcome to the Republic of Abkhazia." It's quite a sight, and there you get processed by a combination of Russian and Abkhaz military and border personnel. And then normally they're very friendly to foreigners, but the contrast and the special treatment you get as a foreigner is pretty stark in comparison to the local and especially ethnic Georgian population that have to cross. We got very, very preferential treatment from the Russian soldiers, and they were joking with us. They let us skip the queue. We just crossed. And yeah, it was a pretty simple process. Then we just cross, bargain with the taxi driver, and you go on to the capital, Sukhumi, Sukhum, as they call it. But Georgia itself, like the rest of the country proper, it's a fantastic destination. I go back, I spent my summer again there this past summer. I combined it with an internship because I'm doing a master's in journalism and international affairs now. And Georgia as a destination, I would truly recommend it. It's got a fantastic, vibrant culture, a wonderful culinary scene, and it's just an all-around beautiful country. You've got the sea, you've got mountains, you've got beautiful nature. It's really a mix. So I would definitely recommend it. And it's really easy with visas. I'm sure it extends to a large extent to Australians, Americans as well. But in terms of the visa situation, you arrive and you get 365 days visa free. And even if you leave on day 364 and you come back an hour later, the 365 days restarts. One more thing, actually, it's an interesting fact about Georgia that I think I would be remiss not to add, just because I do have this tattooed on my finger. And it goes back to the whole food culture and the rich culinary scene there, but the food scene is absolutely incredible there, with their whole mix of flavors, virtue of Georgia being conquered by a bunch of different empires that over the centuries have brought all their different flavors to create this really rich mix of cuisine. But I think just a funny fact is how rich the language is in terms of their specific vocabulary. So this is the only tattoo I have on myself, and it's on my index finger actually, and it's because I finally found a word as a foodie that spoke to my soul and continues to speak to my soul. So they have one word in Georgian, which is Shemo Medjama, and I can send that just so it's easy to spell. And the word means that I wasn't hungry, but I accidentally ate the whole thing anyways, and it was delicious.
That is sensational.
Yeah, and they have a whole list of words that work with this root, or I don't know what to call it linguistically, but it's like a whole of, I didn't mean to accidentally spend that money, but I spent it all anyways. But it's this one with the food in particular, and it's just one word. It's just one word that when I heard about that, I was like, wow, this place speaks to my soul.
A great idea for a tattoo. Now, Memories of Eden will be available to read in show notes. What is our next episode, Phil?
Lungi, an amazing nomad from South Africa who overcame her fear of water to become, a sailor and the first African woman in an Arctic expedition.
Ooh, bye.
Bye.